What's up, everybody? I mean, the HBCUs, they just keep doing their thing, right? Prairie View A&M, the men's team, they got a win in the first four, so that means Howard and Prairie View A&M make it into the official, the big, the for real, the traditional field of 64 like it used to be. We're just going to call it the Sweet 64. They are in there. Liv is back. All right, Liv, we're cooking. We're cooking, baby. That's 2 HBCU wins in a row.
And that's actually the first time it's happened since 2021 when Norfolk State and Texas Southern men did it. So, this is a great start to March Madness for us. If we're going to be in these first 4 games, which, we love the units, we love the money, I need us to win. I need us to win those games. And that's exactly Howard started off strong. And as I expected, Prairie View handled Lehigh, especially in that second half, winning 40-26. We're rolling right now. So I'm expecting these other teams whether it's in the NCAA tournament or other postseason, to do the same and truly keep building off the momentum these first 2 teams did.
All right, let's go through the stats. Yesterday here on HBCU Gameday, Liv, you said you looked at the film and you predicted clearly that Prairie View was going to win. It's a 12-point win. It wasn't close. What stands out to you based on what you're seeing on the screen with the stats, plus what you saw with your eyes watching the game last night?
Yeah, so the first half, I felt like Prairie View started off very strong, but then in the second half of the first half, they kind of started getting riled up, playing out of body. I felt like they were forcing shots. And come that second half, we saw the Prairie View team that we saw through the SWAC tournament and throughout that month of February in SWAC play. Shooting 47% from the floor while holding your opponent to only 36 was phenomenal. In that second half, it truly started on the defensive end of what was generating them points. In the first half, we saw Cory Wells, who on the broadcast, they were calling these two Batman and Robin. I don't want to limit Cory Wells to just that sideman role because he was truly phenomenal last night. He's really what kept them in that game in the first half, going for a double-double, 19 and 11. He also had 3 assists, 3 steals, truly all around. And if you watched, he was amazing on help side defense, getting deflections, coming when the double truly needed. And then in that second half, we saw Dontae Horne come alive. He went off for 25 points, 7 rebounds. And we also saw Lance Williams, who we saw this big 3 really emerge in the SWAC tournament, go off for 10. The biggest key was that Lehigh is a 3-point shooting team, and they held them to only 6 made 3-pointers the entire game. So they went 6 for 24, and that really limited what Lehigh was able to do. I thought in the second half, they did a great job of guarding Lehigh's post player and limiting his ability to impact, because in the first half, they were really going at Corey Dunning, and then Hassan Diallo gave great minutes for PV off the bench and was really physical. But this is what we saw. It was the defense to offense, what Byron Smith has spoken so highly of them switching everything, being very intentional on the defensive end, and it translating to really good, high-quality offense.
You talked about that yesterday when you talked about the thing that really turned their season around, and it was going to that, look, we're just going to switch everything off these screens. Did you ever get any insight on what brought about that change in defensive philosophy? Look, we saw last night 18 points off turnovers. You talked about them limiting the 3-point shooting. Did you get any insight on what caused Prairie View to make that decision, to make that switch, which actually hit the switch when they made it?
I think what was a really good igniter was Corey Dunning, their athletic post player. Byron Smith loves to joke and say he is really great laterally. He doesn't get up. He's not someone who's going to block a lot of shots, but he has that great lateral movement that can keep up. And with their size and athleticism, they just found that once they started doing it, it just worked because they had players who would commit, and even their smaller guards that we see in Lance Williams, he has some muscle on him, so he's not afraid to bang in the post. And so I think it started all with Cory Dunning and what he was able to do athletically from that 5 position of being able to sit out on the perimeter and guard opposing teams' guards, and them just it throws teams off. We're not used to seeing teams switch 1 through 5. And so I truly believe Cory Dunning and Cory Wells, who is such an athletic 6'7" player, they were kind of the ignition behind that change going into play.
All right, so on the men's side, and we got several videos up about the women's play as well. We're just talking right now about Prairie View. Yesterday, we talked about Howard. They'll have #1 Michigan. In case you just did not get Prairie View going through on your bracket, and you're like, oh, they won. Who are they going to play? Hold on. I'm going to hit the magic button over here, Liv. Da-da, da-da. It's not a shark, but it's got some teeth. Those Gators from Florida. That game is going to be Friday night, 9:25 Eastern in Tampa on TNT. Whew, Prairie View is going to need some TNT if they want to blow up anything that Florida is going to try to do. Liv is going to be, as much as we love Prairie View, it's going to be a tough matchup.
Yeah, they're for sure going to have their hands full. As you know, Florida's the returning champs, and they're not going to let any moment kind of like, you don't want to ever look past a team, because we've seen so many teams in NCAA history look past, not necessarily that 1 versus 6 team matchup, because that's happened a very small amount of times, but they're going to come in. They saw how Prairie View played in that opening round. I know they've done their film on Dontae Horne, on Cory Wells, and just the system that they have. I think we saw highlighted in that game that area of concern with Prairie View, and that's when they're having to guard a true post player, because Lehigh's post really, the second half, they really figured it out, but the first half, they would just kept going inside, because I swear he probably had about 50 to 60 pounds on Corey Dunning, and so I'm sure both teams are in the lab. Anything can happen, right? Anything once you get in between those lines, anything on any given night, but Prairie View, them Panthers are going to have their hands full on Friday night. And I know Florida's not going to want to come in and look past them lightly, because they've seen when a team is hot, especially as hot as Prairie View has been, they're not going to treat that game lightly at all.
It has happened, so there is precedent. UMBC as a 16 seed beat #1 Virginia a few seasons ago. It's more likely the 15 versus 2 is that sweet spot of a potential upset. That has happened 11 times over the course of history. Liv, Coach, look, Byron Smith was a bit on the hot seat maybe this year. They hadn't won one since, 2019? That was the last time they won a SWAC championship. But because of his contract and because of them getting hot, he kicked in a trigger that brings him back for one more year, right?
Yeah, and that's why coaches love those incentives. Once he hit 17 wins, that got a 1-year extra extension for him. And, rightfully so. As teams, I will say we're in the transfer portal era where we're seeing not only HBCU teams, not just mid-major teams, but all across the NCAA board, we're seeing overhaul, right? We're seeing teams with 10 to 12 new players every single season, and they got hot at the right time. They battled, like every team, injury throughout the season, but they figured it out. And so I know he's happy, because he's like, man, I told you. And he's the first person to tell you this team never stopped believing in himself. Dontae Horne, who has emerged the leader of this team, has said they've always believed in themselves. And so, but he's like, well, y'all are stuck with me for another year, because last night in his postseason, he said the buzzards were circling for his job. And so he's a winning coach. He has those 3 regular seasons, the 1 SWAC tournament, and now make it 2. And so he's like, don't count me out quite yet.
Liv, do you think there is an actual impact that you can measure for the NCAA tournament and what it does for HBCUs? I mean, we saw Howard win. We saw Prairie View win. There are people out there, look, every year they're like, oh, Howard, I maybe heard of them, or, oh, Prairie View. Like, they're casual fans that are just into the tournament, and they see both of these teams perform well. Does that help? I mean, look, we know when you win, you get a little extra on that check, because it's all about the money ultimately at the end of the day. But just being on this stage, any impact, you being a former college athlete, do you think these institutions can feel?
100%. Them doing so well in the first 4 games has definitely made people be like, oh, maybe I should be watching. Maybe I should be putting some respect on HBCU basketball. And I'll say from me as a person who has, covered exclusively HBCU hoops, and I see these analysts from other big time networks, and I can tell they don't do their homework because they just are going off of what they see on paper. And sometimes, stats do tell everything, but film definitely doesn't lie. And when we had Howard go in, win that game, and also set a new history for their program, Prairie View to immediately follow that up and also make history for their program, that makes people from the outside who aren't a part of this culture, who aren't immersed in HBCU basketball, be like, oh, there is talent there. The talent they've been speaking about has always existed there. The coaching, the phenomenal coaching we have, oh, it does exist there. And so I'm so happy that these teams were able to take advantage of the national stage. We saw that last year with Southern when they won their first 4 game, and suddenly everyone was like, oh my goodness, Southern women's basketball, and they're tuned in, and we're all like, we've been telling y'all about them. And so it gives teams the opportunity to build their, not a school national brand, but their program national brand, and also put some respect on their teams, the conferences, and who we are as HBCU basketball. Because even when we're matched up against other mid-major conferences, people are like, oh, those are just SWAC and MEAC teams. And I'm like, hold on. No. So I'm really glad, they handled business in these first 4. And, I hope that while both their hands are going to be full in these games versus number 1 seeds, I truly hope they go out there. And like I know they will, they're going to fight to the end and play their brand of basketball. And, it's great for all of HBCU basketball when teams go on this stage and they perform well.
All right. Look, I like Gator. So Prairie View on Friday night, let's roast some Gator. Let's get some Gator meat. Let's come back with some Gator boots. Liv, do you need a Gator purse to go with?
I might. If they can make me one that night, I would happily accept it.
All right. I'll even wear some of those Detroit Gators, man. Just some of those Stacey Adams Gators if Prairie View gets the win. We're going to take care of that Gator. Break it down. All right, Liv, every time HBCU wins this week, look, me and you, we're coming back. We're going to talk about it. So we made it 2 days in a row. We got more games on tonight. Mm-hmm. So let's keep it rolling. The more they win, the more we talk, and that means everybody has a smile on their face. She is Liv for Hoops. She knows her stuff. You can find her. How do they find, if anybody is, for whatever reason, not following you on social, how do they follow you, Liv?
Yeah, it's just Liv for Hoops, FOR, across all social media platforms. I'm there talking about HBCU basketball all day, almost every single day. So
how did you come up, before we go, how did you come up? Because that is such a catchy name, Liv for Hoops, because your name is Liv. And it almost, when you say it, you're like, I live for hoops. Like, how did that come about?
When I first was like, oh, I'm going to start covering HBCU basketball, I was like, I want some kind of just a name that kind of sticks. And I was just like, okay, Olivia doesn't work with anything. So I was just like, Liv. And I started just teetering around with words and trying to see what fits. And then, like you said, that's exactly why I chose it, because I am Liv and I'm for hoops, but you live for hoops. So it worked out that way. And live just happens to be a word that is actually a real word in the dictionary. So it worked.
There it is. She knows her stuff. She has that contagious smile that you see all the time. That's why we love her so much here at HBCU Game Day, because she is Liv for Hoops. All right, we'll talk more HBCU basketball. Make sure you guys tune in, support all of our teams, men and women, as we keep on hooping, as the tournament, March Madness, is here.